I get asked this question a lot, which is basically what is founder burnout? I know that is a word that is used often. So founder burnout is a state of mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. And the worst thing about founder burnout is that it comes with guilt, because you feel guilty because of everything that you're basically going through and the fact that you're not necessarily able to show up for your team, your customers, or your partners. When a founder begins their journey, we're such extreme optimists that we believe everything is going to pan out. We believe that passion, hard work, or discipline is basically going to work out. But that is not necessarily the case, because a founder's journey is basically marked by really high highs and very low lows. Some of the reasons as to why you might find a founder experiencing founder burnout is the hours that we basically work. The pressure to be able to make everyone happy, that being your customers, your team, your investors, and ensuring that everyone is basically satisfied. The financial strain and burden. The fact that we look at the company's failure as our own personal failures, so we associate whatever the company is doing to our own morale or ability to execute. And so with all of these things in play and the hard realization that not everything will always go our way, founders find themselves in a state of burnout. The way that I've basically experienced founder burnout is, one, the inability to get out of bed, right? And that basically stems from the lack of motivation or passion for whatever product or solution you're basically solving for. You're irritable. You will always have conflict either with your co-founders or your team members. You develop extreme anxiety. This is something that I've personally faced myself. It's a sense of lack of belief in oneself to basically execute and achieve some of the things that you basically need to achieve. And so it's a constant state of depression with no clear way out. I remember there's a video by Salma Altman where he was basically asked, how do you deal with founder burnout? And his response was that you power through it. Well, that's one way of looking at it. But what wasn't said is, how do you actually power through it? One of the hardest things about founder burnout is basically guilt. The guilt that is associated with knowing that you've left your company, which you consider to be your child, your investors who believed in you, and your team who've constantly shown up for you, and you're basically leaving them hanging. So it comes with a lot of guilt, and that makes it all the more worse. So one thing to do is, one, disassociate guilt from what you're basically feeling. Remember that you're a human being and you're allowed to feel whatever it is you're feeling. You're allowed to feel beaten down. You're allowed to take time off. So do not feel guilty because of the way that you feel. You're not superhuman and you're not Superman. The ways to basically deal with founder burnout that have worked for me is that, one, delegate. Understand that your team has the same capabilities, if not more, to handle some of the things that you're basically taking on. Secondly, it will basically be looking for emotional support. Look for therapy or a founder group that is able to work with you, people that relate with everything that you're going through, and communicate. I think as founders, we're wired to keep things inert and not necessarily speak what we're going through or talk to people. So share it out and get advice. Lastly, it would be to celebrate. Celebrate those little wins. Celebrate that new partner that you just got. Celebrate that new hire. Celebrate the small product launch that you just did. Celebrate that small traction that you basically achieved. And if we're able to root to our wins as compared to focusing on everything that is not necessarily going right, we realize that at the end of the day, everything becomes a little better one day at a time. Really important for founders to talk about burnout, because that is one of the ways that you're basically able to power through burnout. So burnout is often associated to weakness in the founder world, and that is not the case, and that should not be the case. When you look at places like Silicon Valley, people basically glamorize working for 24 hours on end, working so many hours a week without necessarily rest. And in reality, that is not sustainable. So first things first, speak about burnout. It is a first step to actually starting to recover. When you talk about burnout, you realize that you're not the only one who's basically going through this thing, and you realize that there are other founders who've basically been able to work through burnout and have found solutions that they can share with you. But then at the end of the day, it's really important to realize that if you do not talk about burnout, you do not necessarily address burnout, the consequences outweigh your need for silence. I was asked, how do I stay balanced as a founder? And I think most people will basically say, get a hobby or something of the sort. But as founders, we know that our startup is our hobby, our company is our hobby, our product is our hobby. We're literally thinking about the product, the team, the company when we're in the shower. I'll not necessarily say get a hobby. What I would basically say is ask yourself the right questions. When you're taking on certain things, ask yourself, is there anyone within my team who can basically take this on better than I can? So can I delegate this particular task? The other thing is to not beat yourself up too much. As a founder, as you go through this journey, you will make a lot of mistakes. Don't beat yourself up over it. Lastly, it would be that sometimes things work out and sometimes things do not necessarily work out. Don't dwell on the things that do not work out and focus on the things that actually do. So rely on the people that you can rely on and focus on the wins and let bygones be bygones. We all lose at some point. I would demystify mental health in 3 words: is that it's real, it's valid, and it's treatable.